Okay, councillors, if we can start the meeting, please. Evening all, I'm Councillor Paul Wilby. I'm the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to this meeting of the committee. I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated. The members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that it is taking place. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of the microphones, and remind them to turn the microphones off when they are finished. Okay. Yep. Okay, moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. Do I have any apologies? Okay, Councillor Dubinsky. Okay. Item 2, substitute members.
Councillor Springett for Councillor Trubinsky.
Okay, item 3, are there any visiting members?
Councillor Sands.
Councillor Wilkinson for item 17.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Sands, what item, please?
Sorry, it's 15 Land at Oakland Place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Okay. Moving on to item 4, I look to Will Fletcher, Senior Planning Officer, to seek the committee's agreement to withdraw item 15.
Yeah, so just to be clear with this one, it is a retrospective application, which the officer report doesn't properly reflect. And also the application hasn't been entirely carried out in accordance with, or not in accordance with the proposed plans that have been submitted. So if we were to grant permission tonight, we would have to chase them for another application to rectify the situation. We're still recommending permission despite the changes. We will bring it to the June committee with a proper officer report to reflect the situation on site. Thank you.
Okay, is it agreed by members to be withdrawn? Thank you. Moving on then, date of the adjourned meeting. The adjourned meeting will be held on Thursday the 30th of May if required. Okay. Item 6, urgent items. I intend to take the urgent items update reports. Any verbal updates as urgent items as they are contained further information relating to the matters to be considered at the meeting. Have members had time to go over the urgent papers that have been put on their desk? Yeah, agreed? Thank you. Moving on to disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers?
Just in the interest of transparency, Mr. Chairman, my wife, Councillor Joanna Wilkinson, will be speaking on item 17 as a visiting member. I'll be approaching the application with an open mind, however, so I do intend to speak and vote on it.
Yes, on item 16, I disclose that I'm a member of Marden Parish Council, but I've taken no part in the discussions on this item and I intend to speak and vote on it.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Item 14, I just wanted to disclose that I've received a lobbying email from Chart Sutton Parish Council.
Okay, we do have lobbying further on. So, okay. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to declare lobbying for item 15, 17 and 18, please.
Okay, that's the next item. Okay, sorry. We'll make a note of that so you don't have to ask you again. Any from officers? No. Okay, then moving on. Item 8, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? I look to my left and I'll work my way around. Councillor Spooner. Sorry.
Item 14 and item 17.
Councillor Rodden.
Item 22.
Councillor Springett.
Just trying to find the item numbers because I have been sent a lobbying email, but I can't remember exactly which one it was. I think it was Vale. I think it was the Vale, which is item 14 or 14 and 17. Councillor Spooner tells me. Thank you. Ah, yes.
14 and 17, Chairman.
Councillor Clear.
Hi, sorry. No disclosures because I probably haven't read the emails if they've come to me as well.
Okay, Councillor Nagy.
No disclosures.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I've been lobbied on items 14, 16, 17 and 19. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I've been lobbied on item 14, Chairman.
A correction to what I said earlier, Mr. Chairman. I've been lobbied on 15 and 17 only.
Councillor Jeffries.
I haven't been lobbied on any of the items on the agenda for once.
Councillor Cox.
Sorry for being premature. Yeah, I've been lobbied on item 14.
And Councillor Summersgill.
Item 14 also, only.
I've been lobbied on 14, 15 and 17. Moving on to item 9. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public. Is that agreed? Item 10, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of April 2024 be approved as a correct recording and signed. Is that agreed? Okay. I also move that the minutes of the meetings held on the 21st of May 2024 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Okay. Item 12, presentation of petitions. There are no presentations this evening. Deferred items. I call upon Rachel Elliott, Development Manager, Team Leader, to introduce the report.
In terms of an update on the deferred items, in terms of Montrose Sutton Road, there are ongoing discussions and it will be reported back to the committee in the next couple of cycles. And regarding the application site at Maidstone East, discussions have taken place and the applicant is expected to respond soon on those discussions.
Thank you. Okay, item 17, I call upon Francis Emakor, Senior Plan Officer, to introduce the report. Okay, this item is in relation to the Vale Nursing Home at Wellington Street.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I begin this presentation, I would like to remind members there is a published urgent update relating to the ownership of the grass veg between the front boundary of the application site and Otterburn Place. The applicant has produced land title documents indicating the veg in front of the property is in their ownership. This proposal is for the change of use of the existing 24-bed care home to a care home to 11 residential apartments. So on your screen is an image of the care home located on a prominent corner plot close to the junction of Otterburn Place and Wellington Street. The scheme includes a first floor extension, additions of a rear dormer, and alteration to fenestration. It also includes demolition of the front boundary wall, which you can see on the image on your screen, and extension of the car parking space out onto the grass veg. The scheme includes provision of associated landscaping, amenity space, and secure bin cycle storage. In terms of justification for the loss of the existing care home, the application building has double occupancy rooms, which are extremely hard to occupy. Moreover, a lot of the residents referred to the care home have mobility issues, and the existing layout is found to be unsuitable to meet their care needs. The applicant has explored a few options, including demolition and rebuilding, but these were found to be unviable. The extensions and alterations proposed to facilitate the conversion of the building are appropriate in scale and their design. So this is the application side, as I was saying a while ago. And the scheme replaces the current blank dead frontage with an active frontage, which is in keeping with the existing character of the area. It is regrettable the grass veg would be lost. However, this negative impact on balance is outweighed by the positive change to provide an open and active frontage. The proposed parking area would include new landscaping, which would improve the appearance of the area. The proposal is acceptable in relation to overlooking privacy issues, and levels of activity would not compromise the residential character of the local area. On parking provision and demand, the adopted parking standards require the provision of 16 off-street spaces. The proposal includes provision of 13 off-street parking spaces. The current 24-bedroom care home had 8 off-street car parking spaces for visitors, care home, and medical staff. The submitted plan shows the provision of 11 cycle parking spaces within a cycle store. This provision is in line with the standards of 1 cycle parking space per unit. The apartments would be accessed off Atterburn Place, and this access is found to be acceptable. In terms of, this is the proposed site plan indicating where the parking spaces are going to go. We also have the cycle store located in the, I think that's the southeastern corner of the site. On your screen is the application building itself. So in terms of biodiversity enhancements, the proposal includes biodiversity enhancement indicating the location of bird boxes and other biodiversity enhancements, and these are secured by a planning condition. On your screen is a biodiversity enhancement plan showing where some of those biodiversity proposals would be located. So the development is considered to be acceptable with regards to the relevant provisions of the development plan, the NPPF, and all other material considerations such as are relevant. The officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call Mr. May, objector. Just come forward. You'll see a little speak button on the microphone, push that, and then you then have 3 minutes.
This proposal does not comply with more than 21 areas of planning policy: the Kent Structure Plan, ENV2, Maidstone Local Plan, NPPF and policies LC1 and 2, SP1, DM1, DM7, DM9, and numerous LPR policies. Head of Planning Andy Jeffers suggested that 11 flats were too many, but advised all these policies would be respected, which is clearly not the case. We identified there are many incorrect, inaccurate, or misleading comments in the officer's report and the planning statement regarding this application. Examples include: 1. The Kent and Medway Structure Plan requires 16 parking spaces. However, there are only 11 plus 2 spaces. 2. It should limit the need to travel by offering a genuine choice of transport modes. It does not. There is not even a bus stop nearby. 3. Parking should not be in front gardens unless screened from view. Clearly does not comply. 4. Traditional boundary walls should be retained or, where feasible, reinforced. This application involves the destruction of a 60-year-old wall to create private parking, leaving only 2 on-road places for the 10 existing residents visitors, encouraging pavement parking. 5. It should not create additional pollution activity or vehicular movements. No, 13 additional vehicles would do the exact opposite. 6. The proposal does not fit unobtrusively within the existing character of the street scene. It represents a significantly higher density than that which exists within the local area, creating a huge loss of character to a quiet residential location. 7. The amenity space is not acceptable for a building of this size and proposed use, as a large part of the garden has already been sold. 8. The negative impact of losing all lawns is outweighed by a change to an open frontage. No, it's actually replacing significant areas of lawns in a prominent location with 13 cars or vans parked on a large area of hard standing. 9. Any amenity or parking issues for residents would be removed by this plan. No. 11 flats with now high mobility occupants, it would actually make things worse. 10. It seems reasonable to assume that future occupants would not comprise families with children. No. Very misleading, as there are 4 2-bed and 1 3-bed flats. 11. Doubling the number of vehicles in this tiny close would not be harmful to the quiet residential character of the area. No. This is a small, narrow cul-de-sac originally designed for just 9 houses plus the vicarage. A previous application to replace the existing grass areas with car parking was refused, as it would cause significant harm to the character and street scene, contrary to MPPF, Local Plan SP1 and DM1. This application is even more detrimental. Therefore, in the light of all the contradictions with the various councils' own planning policies, only some of which I've just highlighted, we feel it would be a perverse decision to approve this application. And I'm not persuaded that the financial viability of the home is not a planning matter, but a commercial issue for the owners to manage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was bang under 3 minutes.
Is that it?
Yeah, fantastic. Cheers. Can I call forward Mr. Ellsworth, please?
Okay, an extensive list of non-compliance with multiple planning policies was earlier outlined as best possible in the 3 minutes allowed. In the last 3 years, government figures showed Maidstone has delivered 46% more than its required new homes target. This report quotes a local plan review requirement for 1,228 additional residential care beds and advises the loss of these 24 that must therefore be considered, and projections indicate nearly 1,000 more beds are needed by 2031. So it's difficult to comprehend why officers recommend replacing a dementia respite care home that had a CQC overall rating of good just this April by cramming 11 flats into this building, unless it is just for the financial gain to the owner, which should not be a planning consideration. At a time when there seems to be repeated calls for facilities for a growing aged population in the area needing care, we assume this change of use is to avoid the cost of carrying out updated statutory health and safety requirements that may be necessary, but obviously also to maximise the value of the property now that it's been hugely expanded. Up until recently, we found the Vale had full occupancy and very favourable reviews, but we now see that Charing Healthcare have chosen to run the Vale down completely compared to its other homes. We bought number 1 Otterbourne Place in 1979 opposite a private family residence then called the Old Vicarage. Since converting to the Vale, and despite selling off a large part of the grounds to build the house, it's continually expanded in every possible direction, and it was only allowed, we believe, due to all the applications being for a care home. It's considered that a site visit by councillors can put in context the visual impact of this proposal, that what it would have on this small narrow cul-de-sac occupied mainly by retired couples, and which the Vale's own publicity describes as an area that has long been favoured for its subdued high-end residential character, which will be totally destroyed by this proposal to replace the lawns with a hard-standing car park that has already had planning permission refused once. The parking design means residents opposite would have car headlights shining directly in their homes, and the other parking areas look very awkward to access at the very best. It has only been able to create its 2 visitor spaces at the expense of existing residents' visitors by demolishing a boundary wall and leaving just 2 spaces on the road for visitors to all 10 other houses. Please note, our houses were designed in the 1970s, so the single garages are not wide enough to accommodate most modern cars. Despite what the report says, the site is not within reasonable distance to facilities like doctors, NHS dentists who are taking on patients, or good public transport to Maidstone and beyond. The 440 homes at Downswood nearby will obviously make this worse. I would also respectfully like to remind councillors that this report is only a recommendation and there are absolutely no compelling reasons the committee should approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. The applicant, Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, councillors. The application before you follows both the receipt of detailed pre-application advice from the officers, which has helped guide the design, along with working with your planners during the application process. As the report before you confirms in detail, evidence has been provided by the applicant that the existing care home is no longer financially viable, and the applicant would rehome existing residents locally with other care homes in Maidstone that they own. The design and layout would enable 11 apartments to be provided in the existing residential area. All apartments would meet the national standards in terms of their internal layout, and all dwellings would be afforded an acceptable level of privacy and outdoor amenity space. You will see that the application is supported by all professional consultees, with no objections raised in relation to trees, ecology, and importantly highways, who are satisfied that the provision of 13 parking spaces for the 11 apartments, along with cycle storage, would be acceptable. In addition, a viability appraisal submitted with the application has been independently reviewed by the council's own consultant, who accepts the scheme would not be viable were it to include a provision towards affordable housing. Neighbour objections that have been submitted are acknowledged, and my client is grateful that officers have provided confirmation to members that the application site is entirely within their ownership. Comments have raised concerns suggesting harm due to the density of development and to amenity. In response to these, only very modest extensions, mostly at first level, are proposed, with the building in its current form capable of accommodating the conversion to 11 apartments, whilst retaining landscape grounds. When new windows to serve the apartments are required, they've been placed in order to ensure that no unacceptable overlooking to surrounding properties is caused, and the separation standards as required by the council are achieved by the design. In terms of the level of activity associated with 11 apartments, it's important to draw a comparison between those and the existing use, and obviously the existing use would have a lot of vehicle movements 24 hours a day, and that's commented and noted in the officer's report before you. The use of the building, whilst the use of the building would be different to how it is present, the report before you details the level of activity would not be substantially different to the existing use and would be acceptable and policy compliant. And taking these factors into account, I would ask you to support the recommendation before you and to grant planning permission accordingly. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Councillor Jay Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Before you cast your vote on this planning application, I urge you to consider three crucial issues. 1. Loss of a vital care home. This application acknowledges a need for 1,200 additional residential care spaces in Maidstone, yet it proposes to eliminate an existing valuable care home. The applicant claims financial unviability due to access issues, but this care home has successfully operated for over 25 years. Why is it suddenly no longer viable? Moreover, the viability report lacks essential occupancy rate data. In April, the care home earned a good rating from the CQC, and its website is filled with glowing reviews. Losing such a community asset would be a tremendous setback. 2. Parking predicament. While standards dictate a minimum of 16 parking spaces, this application reduces it to 13, citing accessible bus services, which there aren't really any. However, my visit to Otterbourne Place revealed a short, narrow cul-de-sac where additional parking could severely hinder access for residents and emergency services. Just a few extra vehicles could create significant issues. 3. Affordable housing oversight. I find it very disappointing that there is no affordable housing provision within this application. The applicant claims it's not financially feasible to include affordable housing and seeks exemption. But the independent review of the affordable housing financial viability assessment doesn't appear in this application or on the portal. Given these parking issues and the absence of critical information in the viability reports, I strongly urge you to consider voting against this application or to defer this application until all necessary documentation is provided. Let's ensure our decisions reflect the best interests of our community and preserve its essential services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll open up to the floor. So, please. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you. Point of order, should it not be the ward members to speak first?
Apologies, Councillor. Yes. So which one are you going to go first? There's two of you. Done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's only just in my ward as of a few weeks. So, I've got two main issues. I'm not overly concerned about the building and the conversion of the building. My main issue is the street view. You know, I drive past this and it's lovely and it's open and it's green and the wall is just fabulous. And what we're going to get is a row of cars. Yes, there's a tiddly bit of landscaping on Otterbourne Place, but there's nothing on Willington Street. So you're just going to see a row of cars. So on the street view, it's appalling. It's just terrible, that lovely wall, you know, and the openness, the whole openness of the entrance to Otterbourne Place. Parking, it's bad enough that the Kent standards only require 16. We struggle with that on many applications. That's not enough. And here we are with 13, and not only 13 that are crammed in, right in sight of everybody, of the street and everything. So I just think they need to think again on the parking and think again a bit more on the landscaping, because you're just going to have a whole row of cars on Wellington Street and the loss of a very significant wall around a lovely building. Thank you.
Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have to determine the application which is before us. I think it's a lovely old building. One can imagine that 100 years ago it was surrounded by green fields, but now it isn't. We need to find some use, some viable use, and I think flats is perhaps a viable use. But it seems to me that the previous owners have obviously sold off bits of land for development, and in doing so they have now severely constrained themselves in what they can now do with the existing building on the site in terms of providing car parking, landscaping, amenity space, etc., etc., etc. Two big issues concern me. Firstly is the lack of car parking. There is very little on-street car parking in Otterbourne Place. And secondly, I am very upset with the loss of the green verge. I mean, that is a significant local feature. It's a valuable part of the street scene. So trying to find a way forward, I know that in the past, or I think in the past, we have granted permission for some blocks of flats where we have entered into a legal agreement with the applicant or the owner to sell them to people who commit to not owning a motor car. So the occupiers cannot own a car. If that was to happen, by my calculations, if, say, the one-bedroom flats were sold to people who did not own a car, there may then well be enough on-site parking spaces for the other flats. That would also obviate the need for car parking to extend onto the green area, which I think is absolutely essential to protect and preserve. I value the advice of the officers on the suggested legal agreement to restrict the owners of the flats to not owning a car. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Before I go, I'll get those questions answered by the officer, if possible.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe there is sufficient parking spaces on site for future occupants of the houses. If Councillor Spooner believes that the one-bed flats should occupiers should be prevented from owning cars, I think that's something that we can agree potentially with the Section 106 agreement. Yes, under Section 106 agreement.
So can you say
yeah, so
we can do that as a condition?
Yeah, I believe that's something that can be agreed as part of the if permission is granted.
Just come.
I think if members were likely to go down that route, probably deferring the application would probably be a better thing to explore. One, whether it's a possibility, and two, what actual impact that would have on the parking on the site, and whether that actually would lead to the protection of the verge, which appears is a major concern.
could I possibly suggest with that? I know we've done this before as well, where we've done a car scheme. So there's a car there that people can actually book out for those 1-bedroom places. We've done it with flats within the town centre before.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Just so we don't, we've done this before where we've debated for quite some time and still deferred it. Before I go across to the question, the council on this side, is anyone mindful to defer it now, or do they still want to continue?
If I may, Chair, I think we should be taken because I think there are other reasons why perhaps we should discuss with the applicant in the opportunity afforded by any deferral. Thank you.
So to be clear, Councillor, you're proposing deferring?
I think Councillor Jeffrey indicated before me, I don't know if he wants to come in. Well, okay, if I come in, I mean, firstly, I'd just like to kind of reassure local residents who are really, really concerned that if their concerns seem to be ridden roughshod over, the problem with this committee is that we are a regulatory committee, not a policy committee, and we have to determine all applications in compliance with the development plan. And the development plan policies do not give us very much room for manoeuvre to actually challenge the application. So we're just trying to find ways to address the local concerns within the local plan and national planning policy framework parameters. But leading on from that point, I think there are a few issues that need to be resolved aside from the issue of parking. Firstly, I think there's quite a significant issue here with surface water runoff in terms of the currently we've got nice permeable grass and mud on the slopes and in the area where we're proposing basically to tarmac over it. So we're seeing more and more intense rainfall and it's only going to get worse. So I think there's a couple of things that we need to discuss with the applicant. And one is the genuine permeability of any surfacing which is used for that parking area and that it maintains that permeability going forward. The other issue which was raised by the ward councillors is the visual impact. We currently have some proposal for some kind of low planting landscaping at the front of the parking area. I think we need to look to see whether we can't get some actual tree planting in there to get some kind of vertical height in there and to soften the impact of, you know, the tyranny of active frontages, which I know is kind of, you know, what planners seek, but, you know, I prefer a wall and a grass verge, frankly, but if we can get some kind of native tree cover into that frontage, it would help. Third issue is the fact that we have biodiversity net gain proposal for basically some bird and bat boxes to stick on trees in what's left of the garden. That does not strike me, and a wood pile, that does not strike me as sustainable in the long term. That there is a built component to this, 2 first floor extensions. Why on earth are we not just putting Swift bricks or bat bricks into those first floor extensions so that they're there as long as the building is? So I would like to negotiate integral niches for biodiversity rather than, frankly, things that can be taken off or fall off the nearest tree very quickly. Third point is in terms of the landscaping, as well as the site frontage and breaking up the car parking, I'm very aware, for all the reasons that have been explained by local residents, that when this was a care home, the building was extended in all directions, and it's a big building in a small plot surrounded by much smaller dwellings. So I'm quite keen that we look at the site boundaries, particularly the north and northeast boundary, where there's a few trees currently, to see whether we can't plug some of those gaps with some further tree planting, just to create some enclosure where it abuts residential areas. So, and I have talked to the case officer about this, about that enclosure and what's possible. And then the fourth issue, where I would like the clarity, is that quite rightly there is a condition around renewable energy and 10% renewable energy. We can do that because we've got a residential extensions supplementary planning document that can require renewable energy generation in residential extensions. I'm just really would like some satisfaction as to what is being proposed. You know, is this an air source heat pump? You know, is this kind of solar PV? Just so that we can understand the design and amenity impacts of the renewables that are going to be used, so that again it's part of our oversight. So I think with those few additions to the reasons for deferral, I am happy to move that we defer if it's not already been moved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll hear Councillor Jeffrey, and then we'll move to the. I'll second that, but I'll listen to what say. But yeah, I'll just let Councillor Jeffrey speak first, just in case. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the advantage of letting Tony go before me is he says all I wanted to say. But I want to add one little bit. I want to second that motion for deferral, but can we also have another look at the affordable housing aspects, please? It does hit that threshold. The fact that the return is low suggests to me that it's not a viable thing, and I'm not really convinced that that feels like a good enough excuse for saying there's no affordable housing in this scheme. And I'm really not convinced about the arguments on that it won't harm our long-term provision of affordable housing. So can we please make sure we're comfortable with that? So if that could be added to the rationale for deferral.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. On the note of the affordable housing, I know there was a feasibility report done. Are you asking for that feasibility report to be made available? Okay. I'm also just going to bring in Officer Fitzpatrick. He's got some advice before we go to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification, if I may. With regards to the parking, I'm not sure if what is being proposed is that there is a reduction in the parking with an associated Section 106 agreement. Is that what is being proposed, or is what is being proposed that we'll keep the parking as it is and then have a restriction on some flats not to have a car? The reason why I asked that is obviously you've got to determine the application that's before you, and the application before you shows the number of car parking spaces. That can't be changed through negotiation or discussion. It's a full application that's before the council or before the committee, sorry. So that's just my one point, and that might be clarified by we're leaving it exactly the same, but if there's a shortage of car parking, there'll be some sort of restriction. The second part is with regards to the Section 106 itself. I'm not entirely sure that a Section 106 agreement is going to be the panacea that people think it will be. There are only two enforcement options that's available under Section 106. One is step-in rights, which you can't really exercise in this situation. And the other part is to then get an injunction. That is an enforcement issue. I'm just wondering whether or not that is something that we would actually enforce going forward. But I just raise those and I'll leave it with the committee.
Okay, thank you, Officer. I'll just get clarification from the ward councillors what they actually are requesting.
I found it a little bit difficult to follow what Russell Fitzpatrick was saying. It's the audio in here is not particularly good, but I think we need to go back to the applicants as we initially agreed to see if we can reduce the amount of parking and to enter into legal agreements with the developers to restrict some of the flats to people not owning cars, probably the 8 one-bedroom flats. That is my suggestion. If we can't do it, we can't do it, but I think we need to try.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Do you have any other councillors who want to speak? Councillor Wilson?
No, I'm mulling it over. Thank you.
Yeah, it was just, Chair, there's a passing reference to the independent review of the financial viability appraisal at 6.44 to do with affordable housing. Is that what you were referencing, Councillor Jeffrey? Because that's, yeah, the complete lack of availability of that. Yeah, that's fine if that's what you'd requested anyway. I'm happy with that.
Sorry, Councillor Spring, cut you off there. You have something to add?
I think what Russell was trying to say was if we're trying to reduce down from the 13 spaces, that becomes an issue because we can't reduce down, I think is what he was coming to say. I think what we were trying to say was 13 isn't enough for the number of flats. So we need to introduce some measure to ensure that there aren't going to be 2 cars per flat equals 22 cars trying to squeeze into 13 spaces, so that by limiting which flats can use those spaces, in other words, that flat A or flat number 1 comes with a parking space, the 3-bed at the top comes with 2 parking spaces, and some of them come with no parking spaces. I think that's where we were trying to go.
Okay, I think as we're deferring this and not actually making a decision on it, we can have these discussions with the applicant, correct? Yep. So we've got a proposer, I'll second it, just to go over the what we're actually deferring for. So we're deferring to look at the parking and reduce the car parking spaces and possibly a car scheme. We're looking at street scene. We're looking at the permeable hard standing, integrated wildlife enhancements, strengthening the planting. So basically we really want a LEMP produced or something actually telling us what's going in within, and what the 10% green infrastructure is going to be going on the building, whether it's heat pumps or PV. Agreed? Okay, so I'm going to, and the viability assessment made available for review by the councillors and public. Okay, all right, so got a proposer, got a seconder, put to the vote. All in favour? Harris? Okay, that's deferred. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. Item 16, Marden Sports Club. This is now a starred item. Councillors? Councillor Nagy? Moving on. So item 16 isn't, sorry. Moving on, so item 16 is now a starred item. Is anyone mindful to talk on it? No? Does the applicant waiver his right? Where is the applicant? Do you wish to talk? Basically, just go through. So, no. Okay. Okay. So, is that agreed? It's a starred item. Agreed. Oh, sorry, we do need a vote on that. Sorry, my mistake. So I'll propose it as a starred item. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. All in favour? Okay, unanimous. Okay. Moving on then, item 14. Okay, yeah, that's Chartview, Chart Hill, Chart Sutton. Can't get enough charts in that one. I'll call upon Will Fletcher, Senior Planning Officer, to introduce the report. Okay, sorry, Councillor, just been informed we've got no one speaking against it or for it. Are we mindful we can do the recommendation? Okay, I'll second that. No, you want to speak? Okay, then we have to introduce it. So, I will. Okay, Will.
So the application tonight is along Chartview Road in Chart Sutton. So just to begin with, I'd just like to draw members' attention to the urgent update where we've changed the description of the development to be better reflective of its part retrospective nature. So change it to part retrospective siting of 3 additional static caravans for gypsy and traveller use, and retrospective siting of 1 additional static caravan for gypsy and traveller use. So the site currently has permission for 3 mobile units, One of these permitted units, which hopefully you can see just about on the screen here, which is outlined. This has been removed and replaced by 2 smaller units. So as well as the 3 that are highlighted in yellow, this red one is retrospective. So in total, there'll be 7 mobile units on site should members be minded to approve the application. And delegated authority is requested to amend condition 3 to reflect this. So just to be clear, there's 3 currently with permission, and then 4 more if you're minded to approve tonight. The applicant has detailed this on the existing and proposed plans. It's in the text, you can just see at the bottom there. And it has been pointed out in representations received. This does not change the officer recommendation. Moving on to the application, in terms of visual harm, gypsy and traveller developments are not normally permitted based on provided they are screened by existing permanent features such as hedgerows, tree belts, buildings or land contours as required by local plan review policy HOU 8. Consequently, unless well screened or hidden away in unobtrusive locations, mobile homes are normally considered unacceptable in their visual impact. So the site is situated immediately to the east of Chart Hill Road. So we'll just quickly go to the satellite photo. This is out of date. As I said, this is the mobile that's been replaced. With the site on the eastern side. Just going through some of the sites. We have Chart Hill Road facing south here. Site benefits from a good level of natural screening. The hedgerow, I think these were taken just the other day. You can see some of the close border fence. This is the northern boundary of the application site. So this is just poking my head through the hedgerow here. And another view facing north, so very well screened by the existing hedgerow. Views into the site are mainly through the vehicle access, although that is closed, a closed bordered fence. With screening and closed bordered access gates. Yeah, the caravans are not visually prominent from Chart Hill Road, with only the views of the existing site are generally the tops of the caravans. As detailed in the officer report, there is a significant shortage of sites and a need for sites. This application, which seeks to intensify an existing well-screened site, would not cause significant visual harm to warrant refusal. The representation received today refers to a recent application, which is immediately to the southeast of the application site, which we refused. This application, quickly go to it. This sought to extend the site further into the countryside, so effectively establishing a new gypsy and traveller site in this location. This is a significant difference from this application, and as such, it is not considered entirely relevant to this application, which seeks to intensify an existing site and would not encroach further into the countryside, unlike this application here. This is a very different level of harm between the 2 proposals. We have, this is a public right-of-way. 562 is sited approximately 60 metres to the east of the application site. So by intensifying the existing site, it's not going to broadly alter the view from the footpath. The previous application would have encroached onto that footpath, so the harm would have been quite a lot more severe. Additionally, the representation refers to the site allocation. This Chartview site was allocated under the previous 2017 local plan. Under the previous local plan, the site was allocated to no more than 4 pitches. This allocation is no longer present in the local plan review, and in any case, this does not prevent the applicant from applying to establish more sites on the site. Finally, an appeal decision was issued on the 12th of April this year on this site, which sought the erection of a day room and poorhouse. We refused that application and the appeal was dismissed. Both of these were very significant buildings which would have caused harm and do not benefit from any of the need or site supply considerations that lend weight to residential units on the gypsy and traveller sites. Caravans will be viewed in association with existing caravans in the locality. What was proposed in that instance would not do. So local plan review policy HOW 8 of the review allows for gypsy and traveller accommodation in the countryside, providing certain criteria are met. Policy SP9 allows for development provided it does not result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. The GTAA published in 2023 outlines a need for 340 pitches in Maidstone, and the council's current position is that it can demonstrate a 1.2 years worth of deliverable pitches at 1st of April last year. The proposal has been assessed in relation to its visual, landscape, highways impact, sustainability, residential amenity, flooding and drainage, and found to be acceptable. The development does not result in significant visual harm, and the development is acceptable regarding the other relevant provisions in the local plan. As such, the officer's recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, Councillor Springett, indicated.
Thank you. I appreciate it's well screened. I found this really hard to understand, this application, because there's been applications, then appeals, and then we approved 2. So I thought it originally started with 2, and then I think it went to 4. I think 2 was the appeal, then it went to 4. Now we're trying to add another 3. Now, at some stage in one of the appeals, and I could have got my knickers in a twist on this one, the inspector commented about it was suggesting additional mobile homes would mean that the site would come to dominate the nearest settled community. And he didn't feel that 2 extra pitches would upset the equilibrium. But he then went on to say, that said, this is not an unfounded concern. Further growth of the sites here could well mean that this relatively sparsely populated area, notably the immediate locality of Rabbits Cross Hamlet, would become dominated to the detriment of its character and community mix. And I'm not sure whether that has been considered as part of this application. Furthermore, it says that he was mindful of concerns in relation to increased vehicle movements, noise and external lighting. And he said that with just the extra 2 at that time, he didn't feel that was an issue. However, he then went on to say in paragraph 35 of that report, a more substantive increase to the site, however, could well change the character of the area insofar as noise and disturbance from vehicle movements are concerned. So what I'm worried about is I think we started off with a stable block and then we changed the stable block to 2 caravans. And I think 2 caravans then becomes 2 static and 2 touring. And we're now looking at 7. Now, is this 7 pitches, which is 7 static and 7 touring? Or is it just 7 in total? And has any consideration been given? We've actually got an inspector here who, for once, is saying, hang on, chaps, there's an issue with overwhelming the local community, and we're just not looking at that. So that's where my concerns lie. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not, I mean, as you say, the appeal history is quite complex. I'm not sure exactly what appeal you're referring to, but in the planning history section, I do point out that the refusal decision on the 2019 application was made at a time when it was considered that we could demonstrate a 5-year gypsy and traveller supply, which we can't now. So that's quite a significant, gives significant weight to granting approval. Perhaps back then, we could demonstrate that supply, so we're in a better position to refuse this type of application. In terms of the number of mobiles, it's 7 static caravans.
They're not going to have a single touring one, and we're going to condition that no further vehicles, caravans, touring or otherwise, will be added to the site, because I can see that becoming an issue, and we'll add another 7. So can we condition that no further caravans, touring or static will be added?
Yes, we can include that as a condition.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that Councillor Springett is referring to the application, which was almost doubling the site, the other picture that was shown, where there was an extension of the compound. I think actually, frankly, within the current fenced area, you could fit as many caravans in there and it probably wouldn't have a visual impact. There would, of course, be the access and egress and the vehicles coming and going. However, I think the reason why I think this is a positive move in this application is through the fact that the 3 quite small units of going into the site, we're actually gapping up the hedge on Chart Hill Road, and we're screening that fence which projects out into the field with a new hedgerow planting. So I think actually in terms of planning, I think we're getting some step forward, but I certainly agree about further intensification in such a small hamlet wouldn't be great. But I think, I think this application actually brings some positives. So therefore, I'm happy to move that we do grant permission as per the papers, but with the additional condition as suggested about further intensification within the fence compound would be unwelcome because, you know, literally there wouldn't be enough space then.
Is that seconded? So Jeffries, do you want to talk on that? Oh, do you want to reserve your right? Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go to the vote, I must say that I'm becoming increasingly concerned about the number of gypsy and traveller sites we grant permission for. This all changed dramatically 20 or 30 years ago when national planning policy changed quite dramatically, and the gypsy and traveller communities were seen as being a valuable part of the countryside, and we all accepted that. You know, they've been around for years, fabulous. But over the years, appeals have been granted on fields for 2 or 3 caravans, and then 2 or 3 more caravans on that same field. And what concerns me is that all of these existing sites, and this is one of them, are actually getting filled up. And looking at the demand for gypsy sites that there is, it's not going to be long before we're going to have applications coming forward on virgin sites. Now, I think it's in the interest of the indigenous communities and in the interest of the gypsies and travellers themselves that we have some coordinated approach to all of this. And I can well see serious problems coming up. So I would like to make a further recommendation that we make a recommendation to the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and Management and the Cabinet Member for Community Cohesion to advance the I think it's called the Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People DPD. You know, that has been ongoing, but I think work on it now is getting to be urgently needed. And if we could have some update on where we are with it and possibly even a timescale, I think that would be in everybody's best interest, ourselves as a regulated planning committee, for the gypsies and for the local communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Martin Argy.
I just wanted to raise a small concern over the layout of the site. I just wanted to know whether that was the most efficient way for laying out the caravans on there. When you compare the 2 images that we've got up at the minute, you can see the one on the right is substantially more laid out with more space, more access to all the caravans. But the way that we've got them laid in here, it looks like we're trying to cram in as much as we can in a smaller area where there is the potential to obviously just advance the site further this way. So is there any way that we could possibly look at amending the current layout to making sure that it's accessible that way?
Simple answer, no. So we either decide on it, defer it, or yeah, we could decide to defer it. So you can't change the layout on this committee as such. So unless we go to a deferral and then have a discussion on it. So okay, but as we've got a proposer for the proposing what's on papers with the addendum, Councillor Spooner, yours will have to be a resolution after we take the vote. Okay, so less than any other members, I'm going to move to the vote. So all in favour? Those against? And those abstaining? Okay, and then you propose the resolution. I'll quite happily second that. That goes to the Cabinet members. Okay, those in favour? Okay, those against? Those abstaining?
If I may come back to you, Chairman, I think the really critical point here is around the fact that we don't have a public site in the borough. And until we can prove that we actually have public sites which are well appointed, we're going to keep getting speculative applications, and hopefully that matter will be resolved.
Okay, and Russell wants to come in with a comment as well. So, Russell.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chairman, mine's not necessarily on what is being discussed at the moment, rather more an observation. When we go to the vote, can we please read out what the outcome of the vote is? Because always those of us who are watching are not actually being told whether or not it's been approved or not. So just if that was approved, if you could just say the application is approved. Thank you.
Okay, Russell. So those watching at home, the application for chart review was approved with the recommendations from councillors. Okay, moving on then. Item 19. Okay, so this is plots 6 and 7 at Eclipse Park in Bourne Road. I think we can also do this as a standard item unless any member is okay. Members, is that you agreeing about start item, Councillor Jeffrey, or you want to talk? Okay, want to speak, so have to be introduced.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'll do a very brief recap on this one because obviously most councillors weren't here last month when it was deferred. So this is an application for a drive-through coffee shop on plot 6 on the right, and a 2-storey building for either offices or light industry on the left in 4 units. Plot 6 coffee shop uses an existing access point, and plot 7 would create a new access onto Sittingbourne Road. Just quickly, that's the elevations for the drive-through coffee shop, and those are the elevations for the employment building. So in summary, officers are recommending approval as the proposed uses comply with the local plan review, and proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of their impact on the local area, and that's all set out in the original committee report. So turning to the reasons committee deferred this application is essentially to look at conditions to address various issues relating to the coffee shop, drive-through coffee shop only. And I'd firstly just draw members' attention to paragraph 2.01 of the latest report, and that just sets out the tests for planning conditions, that they've got to be necessary, relevant, enforceable, precise and reasonable. So picking up on the different areas that councillors wanted us to look at, in terms of idling engines and air quality, and put that together. We're recommending a condition, as we advised, for signage within the site, asking drivers to switch off their engines while stationary, because we can't make people turn their engines off. All we can do is put signage in there. Regarding sort of general air quality measures, as it sets out in the report, the applicants submitted an air quality assessment that concludes there will be insignificant impacts, and environmental health officers agree with that. However, the applicant has put forward electric vehicle charging measures beyond building regulations, because they're dealt with under building regulations, and a travel plan, and we've got recommended conditions to secure those. One of the main discussion points was littering, and the question of whether ANPR technology could be used. So basically number plates are printed on coffee cups, that sort of thing. As we set out in the report, we don't consider that passes the test for conditions, as littering's basically down to individuals' behaviour. It's really beyond the control of the planning system or the applicant. It's obviously against the law, so it's covered by separate legislation, and the council hasn't required this sort of technology on any other scheme, so we feel it would be unreasonable. The applicant's also not agreeable to those measures. So we recommend that that sort of condition isn't imposed, and we feel that the conditions 17 and 20 are proportionate in respect of litter. And then finally, landscaping and lighting. We've amended condition 4 to include 10-year management and protection of the landscaping. And condition 14 amended to require motion sensors for any lighting, which was requested. So in conclusion, we're recommending additional amended conditions, but a condition requiring the AMPR technology is not considered to pass the necessary tests. So permission is recommended once more with those changes in the report. Thank you.
The applicant first of all. So, if you come forward, same again, red button, 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. To welcome the new councillors to the committee, and really for your benefit, because I think other people will have heard some of this before, but just to reiterate that this is a site which has been, Eclipse Park is one of the main employment sites that's been allocated not only in the new local plan, but in the local plan before that and the local plan before that. And most of Eclipse Park is now built out for employment uses. This vacant site is the last main piece of the jigsaw that remains undeveloped. There's been previous permissions for offices. Office market has gone, but this type of development, there is a significant demand for these types of units. Gallagher's, who own and develop Eclipse Park, have an excellent track record at delivering this type of unit. There's a very successful scheme down the motorway at Rootham, which they have developed and is fully occupied and was very quickly as well. So we've worked really hard with officers over the last couple of years to develop a scheme that's high quality and will provide good quality jobs on the site. At the last committee meeting, as you'll be aware, it was deferred to tighten up the conditions, and we've worked very closely with officers to get those conditions as tight as possible to address the concerns that were raised, whilst also taking account of the legal tests. So yeah, we feel they are as tight as they can get to address the concerns that were raised last time. So this is a scheme which is fully compliant with the local plan, and I really hope you're able to support it tonight and help deliver jobs on the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move to the ward councillor first. So Martin Argy.
Thank you, Chairman. My main concern after having looked over this plan is mainly with the air pollution and the rubbish that may accrue from plot 6. With most of these style of restaurants and the turnaround, the quick turnaround that is expected, vehicles coming in and out, I do have a concern that signs may not be enough to enforce the drivers visiting the site to adhere by the rulings due to how short of a time that they will be on that site. Plus, with the congestion that we're already suffering from the planned extension heading into Bearsted, we may be looking at only causing more problems on that junction with the already planned extension. I would also like to advise that if the site does go ahead, that there are substantial bins and recycling places where anyone that is passing through will be able to leave their rubbish, so that we don't have it ending up in the roadways or in the surrounding site, if that is at all possible.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. I've then got Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, so I'll start with the air pollution point and the idling. I'm assuming that it says that that we can't. Was the suggestion that we can only suggest people don't idle? It's because it's not a public roadway. Is that right? Because clearly idling is illegal under the 2004 Road Traffic Act, I believe, and can be enforced. So I'm surprised. So I quite like that confirmation. I mean, And secondly, on the air quality bit, I mean, it is a bit frustrating that it refers to the Upper Stone Street AQMA, because clearly that's the one we've got left after the rest of it was all removed. But clearly it's going to cause a problem for the workers in that area. And I don't see anything, I don't think I saw anything about how that might be monitored or mitigated. I mean, it is going to become an informal services. I mean, that's the worry there. So the idea that 10 vehicles queue is interesting, shall we say? I don't quite get that that assumption, because I'm assuming there's going to be a lot more. And then finally, I've got real concerns about the littering still. I mean, the idea it's individual behaviour. Yes, it is. Yes, it's illegal. But surely it is incumbent on us to agree good planning applications that manage out that problem. And just saying it's not our problem doesn't feel strong enough. And the idea that there's a GDPR implication when somebody's breaking the law, I mean, you know, that's clearly not true, given that it happens elsewhere in terms of printing on the cups. I'm sure that would have been challenged in court by now. So I remain with some significant concerns on this one, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live in the adjacent area, so that comes under Pennard Heath. I do tend to forget since the boundary changes, but I have real concerns about this. I mean, A, the jobs that are coming are going to be minimum wage. B, there are 2 coffee shops already on that site. Why do we need a third? The air quality, you've got the motorway to one side, you're going to have even more traffic coming in, and there is a care home opposite as well, with people who are in there who usually have more compromised immune systems. I have absolutely no problem if people are saying we're going to build an office block or whatever. I just don't see the need for the drive-through coffee shop, to be quite honest. And whilst we want more employment in Maidstone, I'm struggling to see why this needs to be here. The place is already congested, trying to get through to, now this is where we had a conversation before, Bursted and up to Kim's, and that it doesn't matter what time of day you go there, there is always congestion. And I'm just struggling to see why that coffee shop needs to be there. If you were talking about building an office building where people go into work and work in it, I could understand that, because we got the highways agencies opposite, we got Whitehead and Moncton, etc., etc. But a drive-through coffee shop will bring more littering. It'll probably, depending on when it's open, bring more antisocial behaviour. And again, I mentioned the care home that's got approval and is now open. So I've got some real concerns about this. And actually what Maidstone needs in terms of employment is good high paying jobs, not minimum wage coffee shop part-time jobs. However that fits in planning, I don't know, but that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleaver. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. We're kind of rehearsing all of the arguments that came out last time. I don't think anybody believes that this is why we released a greenfield site for development. This came up for development for high value, high wage employment. And we have got retail warehouses and now I don't think anybody has a problem with the employment element of this. I mean, that's all good. I think that the coffee drive-through is definitely a bad neighbour use. The big problem is that the local plan review removed the requirement to provide the employment on it, and essentially it's an open use now. And we keep talking about that local plan is an absolute albatross hanging around our neck, but this is another example of its very kind of policy light approach, which causes problems for real people. And with Cavell House, the residential care home, but also we've got the residential development now at Heathwood on the spur of Old Sittingbourne Road, which are quite close to this. And looking at what happens at the McDonald's drive-through down on the Broadway, We know what happens. You go there on an autumn evening and you see a kind of purple haze of, fume fug above it. It's just it just attracts that use. But actually, in policy terms, come back to the fact we're a regulatory committee and there is literally nothing we can do. We tried a few things last time, but in kind of planning terms, it's not going to do anything about what will definitely become an unofficial motorway service area. And we will get littering, and I think the only addition we've had that beyond what came out of the deferral, and I thank officers for what they have achieved, was the point raised by the ward councillor around bins and recycling bins and what we can actually do about that. The problem is it's drive-through, so people are going to take how long it takes to eat or drink what they've just purchased before they chuck it out the window. So it's probably going to be in Detling or on the M20, yeah. So I think there's not a lot. We haven't got any room for manoeuvre. I think we've done everything we can. I too was a little irked by environmental health's reference to Upper Stone Street. Of course, it's nothing to do with Upper Stone Street. The M20 corridor was an air quality management area until very recently, and frankly still should be. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But for political reasons, it was removed. But as I say, that's another policy block kicked from underneath us. So I'm therefore prepared to grant to move that we do grant permission with all of the changes negotiated by officers, but with an addition that we do look at that bin issue and give delegated powers to the officers to look at the recycling bin provision, both on and off site, to see what we can actually deliver to seek to mitigate some of the impacts, because there is already, quite a litter does get thrown onto the road near Marks and Spencer's and round the roundabout from people who are in the coffee shops locally. And it does often seem to be coffee cups, because I think it's that kind of litter and it's that, frankly, kind of person who buys them on the move and they go out the window.
Councillor Harwood, before I go to other councillors, I'm just going to bring the officer back in to answer some of them.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor Harwood. I just make the point that we've got condition 17, which says give us the details of where bins are. I'm not sure we can sort of beef that up anymore, but I've got the message that we want to go to town on that, but we can't make them put in bins off the site. They have no control over land outside the application site, so I wouldn't want to agree to that knowing we can't do that. So we can only deal with the application site as it is on the slide. You can see the red outline. But what I do, condition 20 is sort of litter management on the public highway, which is on the local roads, and that's defined, but we can't make them put in physical bins on land they don't own.
Just on that though, could we not ask for contributions to bins off the site?
I just don't think that's reasonable to start having a legal agreement to provide money towards bins. It just doesn't pass the tests.
Okay, thanks, Tim's. Okay, I had Mr. Thompson, Councillor Thompson, and then Mark, and then Val, and then come back to you. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points. Referring to page 90 of the report in this item, I do support the objections from Boxley Parish Council shown at 4.2, and I would ask for clarification whether or not their objection that no further development should take place in this area until the Bearsted Road improvement scheme has been completed. Is that something that we can give some weight to? And the second point is to strongly support the comment made by Councillor Harwood shown in the third paragraph on page 90. I note that the new biodiversity net gain requirements talk about a percentage increase from what is assessed at the point at which the works begin. And I note that Councillor Harwood calls out to that strimming to create what he calls a blank canvas occurred at this site. I would like to move, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that we further lobby the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Nature Recovery that Maidstone Borough Council quickly puts in place policies that assess and prevent this kind of behaviour in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, again, it's a resolution. We'll come back to that, and we'll need a seconder for it. So I also then, okay, so that's where I was. Okay, so Councillor Cleater first of all to come back, and then yourself, Mark, and then Val.
Sorry, mine's a question to the officers. Was I right in saying that the people who have put the application in aren't going to be the owners of the land? So I'm taking it that Gallagher's are the owners of the land. In which case, can we ask Gallagher's to put the requisite number of bins, etc.? Because when we last listened to Oaken Wood, apparently they're very good on biodiversity and protecting the countryside and the environment.
Okay, on that item,
if we're dealing with a planning application, we can only determine what's in the red line. We can't talk about what the applicant may or may not do. So you need to focus on what's the planning application, what's the development in there, and then what conditions can be put on, and there's strict tests. So whether Gallagher's or whoever it is might be nice enough to put bins on, it's not in front of us tonight. It's not part of the planning decision. We can put an informative on though. You can put an informative on for anything, but just need to make the point, we can't just ask for things willy-nilly. It's tight tests for planning conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Martin Argy.
No worries. What I was going to ask has always been covered, so all good. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Springett.
Thank you. I've got a very silly question. Are the cups actually recyclable? We're talking about putting in lots of recyclable collection points. Are those particular cups actually recyclable? Because I thought like the other, often these takeaway mugs that are cardboard but wax lined are not. So just throwing that out there, it might just be that we're having to just put refuse bins because I'm not sure they're recyclable. It was just to support what Tony said. This site was sold to us as we really, really need a high quality office development site. Maidstone is desperate for high quality offices. That's what we were told. Funny how that never materialised. Amazing what lies we get told. Had we got the offices, we wouldn't have the air quality issue, but of course the owner of the land isn't really interested in that. They just want to sell their land. So we're just really not achieving what we originally sold the site on, and I don't drink coffee, so I won't be going there. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Spooner, you indicated to speak? No? Okay, all right. So someone else wants to speak? You were go on, Councillor Argy.
Just a very quick question to clarify. If these two plots are connected, so if we vote against it, it would turn down plot 7 as well, or then
okay, to clarify, Councillor Nagy, we're voting on the whole application. We can't siphon it off. We have to vote on what's on the papers in front of us. Okay. And obviously, as much as I agree about the recycling, it's not a planning issue, it's a policy issue. Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, so Councillor Harwood, I believe you proposed it to have a seconder on that. Okay, I'll be the seconder. Okay, and what were your, sorry, can you just clarify you want to strengthen?
Yeah, I mean, we've assimilated all of the negotiated, signage and the 10-year landscape renewal plan and everything. I think the only thing we can do is that we have a condition that talks about litter bins, but we're not actually requiring them in any way. So I just was asking the officers to strengthen the condition related to bins on the site. So as the ward councillor says, they're in full sight, they're right next to where the people in the drive-in are, and they're not just in another part of the car park so that they've ticked the box. It's so that the people who do chuck things out of van and car windows can at least chuck it into a bin. if that makes sense. So it's a drive-through bin. I think that's what we're asking for.
Okay, and then the informative that Councillor Cleaver requested for bins possibly outside the development. Okay, so we're going to vote. All in favour? Okay, those against? And those abstaining? And the application was approved. Moving on to the resolution that was proposed. Could you just clarify that, Councillor Thompson?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor. Just before you do, the officer wants to come in with some information beforehand.
Yeah, I think the concern, I might be wrong, was that people go in and sort of clear sites before. Under this application, because it's before Biodiversity Net Gain became law in February on major applications and April on smaller applications, so it wasn't subject to Biodiversity Net Gain. Doesn't mean we condone clearing this site, but now applications are. There is within the law, and I don't know the precise date, but it goes backwards, so you can't get away with just clearing a site. It backdates it to a moment in time. So if that's your concern, it sort of is covered in this new Biodiversity Net Gain legislation, but that's just for information. You might still want to refer it, but just so you know.
Councillor Thompson.
I'm happy to accept that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is the seconder happy as well? Okay. Moving on then. Okay. So we've got Swanton Farm, Bicknell Road, Bicknell, Kent. Okay, so I'll move the officer to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for part demolition and conversion of a pretty large building to employment uses. So just on the aerial photo here, it's just to show that there's the building outlined in red. As you can see, it's pretty large. And then the existing access track, dotted yellow there, and the proposed access is at this point on Bicknell Road. And there are 4 passing bays down Bicknell Road, which is off that image to the right down the lane. And there's a few houses here just to the south of the building, and the site's within the Kent Downs National Landscape, formerly the AONB. So this is the applicant's layout plan. I've just highlighted it yellow just to show how the building in sort of plan form is going to be broken up. So they're demolishing parts of the building to have this sort of circulation space within. New parking areas on the right here, at the back, and then under an existing building there. And whether you can see it that well, there's new landscaping proposed alongside the track, covering up old access points by the parking there. I've just put these images up. This is the applicant's images, and it's just, I appreciate there's lots of colours there, but the red is the parts of the building that are being demolished. So hopefully that's helpful just to show how much is being removed. And then just quickly a few photos. So this is sort of looking roughly from the access to the white painted brickwork. That's the existing building. The sort of green one there is not part of the planning application. That's to stay. That's just another view, and you can see one of the sort of converted barn houses on the left and the access track here. And that's just a view of the building from the back, and that 2-storey part would be demolished. So just a few main issues in terms of the policy principle. Our local plan allows conversion, reuse of existing buildings in the countryside for employment uses. So the principle is acceptable. It's obviously within the Kent Downs national landscape, and we've got to give great weight to the conservation and enhancement of the national landscape and our statutory duties as well. As set out in the report, the building, probably see from this photo, in our view, it detracts from the landscape, and the conversion works, which are largely to clad it in dark timber, would improve its appearance, and the demolishing parts would reduce its size. So we think it would improve the impact of the building and lessen its impact on the landscape. New landscaping is also proposed. That'll, where you can see on this photo, it would basically be in front of their row of two rows of trees, sorry. So we think the landscaping would also enhance the landscape and screen that building. The 4 passing bays on Bicknor Road and the slightly widened access, we do consider that would cause some harm. But in balancing that against the sort of benefits that I've just referred to and the positive impact on the landscape, we think overall the application would be positive. There'd be a low increase in vehicle movement beyond what the building could generate at the moment. It was brought back into use. And conditions requiring acoustic fence, noise management and limiting the hours, we consider would protect the residential properties next door, as do environmental health. So in conclusion, we consider this proposal complies with our local plan and we recommend permission. There is an urgent update on this one, and it's we've missed them off as 2 additional conditions relating to 10% renewable energy generation and BREEAM very good, which is a requirement of our local plan review. So they're added to the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Okay, we don't actually have the applicant here to talk on this application. Oh, yeah. However, we have to have the ward councillor, so I'll go to you first, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. So I've read this carefully. Now, my main concern on this isn't actually covered in the report at all. We talk about the conversion to industrial units, and by definition, industrial units brings heavier traffic with it, so heavier weight traffic, HGVs, etc. It talks about access to Bicknor Road. What it doesn't talk about is actually where those lorries and other heavy traffic go after Bicknor Road, and they travel through the AONB, or the National Landscape as it now is, and they actually travel through villages which are in conservation areas. And since the whole development here has grown over the last few years, there's been an enormous uptick, or increase, I should say, in the number of HGVs coming through Hollingbourne in particular. And these are roads where in many places it's single track, only because of sort of like allowed residential parking. So there are so many occasions where the road is just completely blocked because we've got 2 HGVs trying to get through, and it just isn't possible. So for me, the application isn't addressing the impact on the wider AONB or national landscape and the communities that it affects.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, there's been no objection from the Highway Authority, and actually the passing bays issue, frankly, is going to inflict some harm on the landscape where they're proposing it, because it's going to eat into the existing hedgerows and so on. And that brings me on to my key point, in that we have landscape drawings, but we have no kind of longer term landscape and ecological management plan. So therefore, will those hedgerows be hammered at about 2 feet and just be splintered stumps, or will they be allowed to grow into hedges that will actually improve the landscape and support wildlife? So therefore, I am keen that we incorporate either a condition or a legal agreement, perhaps, around the long-term maintenance interventions on those hedgerows to ensure an optimal width and an optimal height, perhaps, so that they're not, as I say, just splintered stumps that too many of our hedges are, and which is in real contrast. If you go to Sussex and look at their lovely hedges, and you come back to Kent, and it's an embarrassment. The other issue is there's quite a lot of hedgerow proposed, and then there's references to trees. I think if we are going to rebuild the Kent Downs national landscape, we need to get the hedgerow trees back in. And I therefore wonder whether we should specifically state that we should have that the hedgerows should incorporate hedgerow trees, intermittent gaps, because the old Kent Downs OMB landscape management plan was actually seeking that, a return of hedgerow trees, because current flailing and so on means that we've lost them. So it will be quite good, particularly where the access track goes across, if we get some hedgerow trees to get some kind of height in as a foil to quite a large building. And the final issue, which is kind of landscaping and kind of utilitarian, is there is reference to surface water management and drainage. My suggestion is that we should, perhaps through informative, seek that wet suds ponds are used. And I know we've had another application in Bicknell where we did actually require a wet suds pond, where there was a large area of roof draining off, so that there was an element of standing water, and also it meant that we did not have the water discharging straight into the ground, because we're in Aquifer Protection Zone 1. Thank you.
There's, I'm concerned about lighting, and there's no particular mention in here of precautions. Large warehouses down south of Maidstone have outside lighting where the traffic's going into the warehouses. There doesn't appear to be any substantial point about lighting, especially in the AONB and nighttime wildlife.
Any other councillors? Sorry, go on, Councillor Spring.
Thank you. I think 19 units is quite a lot for this really very rural location. And I think if we get like a tool hire place or a car servicing place, we're going to have a huge amount of traffic. So I do have concerns. I suspect there isn't a strong enough argument because we can't control what goes there. I suspect we can't refuse it. But, you know, we're talking about Bicknell Road, but I think it's Swanton Road, which is the one that comes down into Hollingbourne. That's not the best road to drive along. You know, it's quite narrow, and if we're going to have some quite big delivery vehicles going down there, that's where my concerns lie. It's actually the vehicle access to the site is where my concerns lie.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spring. Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, I must say the big bit that worries me is that those lorries are going to go through Hollingbourne, which is suffering already. I've seen so many impassable days there over the years, and there is damage to the historic road through Hollingbourne itself. So that deeply worries me. The fact it's going to be general industrial is a concern. If it was farm-related use, I would have far greater sympathy for a farm building in the countryside, and I wonder whether or not there are any conditions we could put around that, so that it has to be something vaguely agricultural, perhaps, rather than a car show house. And then finally, I couldn't see anything around renewables. I mean, it's a huge, great roof space there. Can we not insist on some solar panels at least?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. I think that's mentioned in the update as well. I'd also like to point out the actual lighting is covered. It's in condition 18. In condition 18, apparently. I'd also, me and Tony said this probably 7 years ago, and probably Councillor Spooner, on the application just across the road from this, which is the one with the wet pond, the wet suds on it as well. So I don't think that's a bad informative to put in to go with it. But also, I'd point out, if you remember on the application, we did ask for the passing loops, which they were unable to put in due to the fact they didn't have control of the land. So just make councillors aware of those issues that we actually were trying to get those passing loops put in on the previous one. Probably, this team might contradict me, but I think we can we can ask for a traffic plan as well to go with it to actually try and manage the routes, can't we?
Yeah, just quickly on the traffic, and yeah, we're not. If this was a brand new building with all the traffic that would come with it, I think it would be. I'm not saying we'd recommend refusal, but it would be different. But what we've got is an existing building which has a use. So what the applicant does and is able to do is sort of predict what the traffic could be from that use and compare it to what's proposed, and the increase beyond what potentially could occur, and it's generally, Kent Highways accept that, it's generally accepted in planning decisions, is not great. So we're comparing what could occur with what's proposed rather than a sort of blank slate and all the traffic that comes with that. So that's why, in terms of traffic impact it has, whether it's congestion or narrowness on roads, that's why you're probably not seeing a great deal in the report, because we're comparing with what could happen. But you can, you can do, I'm thinking of the former Syngenta site, you could do conditions on sort of routing to the site. We can look at that. You've got to be, you can't necessarily control sort of staff and things like that, but maybe deliveries. I think deliveries, we could look at routing. There's not that many options, as you know. So it's probably that. I was driving there this morning, but it's closed, isn't it? But there's probably only one or two routes down. And if I can just quickly on the points Councillor Harwood raised, I think in terms of the hedges, I think it was on the passing bays. We can't really do a legal agreement, but you can sort of condition minimum heights and widths. You can't say it must be this, because obviously it can grow, but you can sort of condition minimum heights and widths on the hedging. Trees within hedgerows, that's fine. I think the wet pond informative is correct, because that there might not be space to do it. They're proposing to go to soakaways. And in terms of Councillor Jeffrey's point, they're proposing the commercial uses, and that's what's in front of us. And our policy prioritises commercial conversions over residential, but our policies are okay with employment uses in the countryside. In fact, they're quite pro it, as is national policy. Thank you.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Cox?
Pardon me. Swanton Farm, when it was first, as I understand, approved, initially had some planning restrictions on it that traffic wouldn't travel through on the B2163 through Hollingbourne, but they would be routed via Blind Mary's Lane, which runs down the back of Bickler and eventually comes onto the 249. I believe that isn't happening. What I also know has happened over the last year or two is that it started off as a fruit farm. What it actually now is a fruit processing centre. So every day you'll get lorries coming up through and they're bringing fruit in like big container type things. What the farm is doing is packaging it into those small little pallet things you'll find in your supermarket, and you get a corresponding number of lorries go out. My concern here is that isn't actually what it was originally approved for, and actually what we do through this application is grow its capacity to continue doing the same, and there will be a corresponding increase in the number of lorries coming in and out. So it just feels to me that there has to be better controls over what is becoming an enormous industrial unit in an area of outstanding natural beauty and national landscape, which is one step away from National Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Anyone else want to come in? Councillor Harwood. And then... Sorry, Councillor Cox, can you turn your mic off, please?
Sorry. It's an important one for applications such as this, where it's potentially a little bit of a kind of bad neighbour for the surrounding national landscape, is the red line was drawn very, very tightly. And you rightly talked about the fact that it was very difficult to fit the kind of sustainable urban drainage scheme we would usually want. It was very difficult to fit any biodiversity net gain. It was very difficult to fit any landscaping. It's because the red line is so tight to the buildings, it doesn't give you much room. And I just, for future reference, when officers are discussing with applicants their plan, I think we need to ensure that the red line is capacious enough to actually fit everything we will require to make that development acceptable. And I think this is going to become more and more of an issue with biodiversity net gain, that what you need is much bigger red lines so that you can deliver habitat improvements, so you can deliver all of the things we want on the site. So I just really wanted to just kind of flag that with officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. That's noted. Councillor Springett, then Councillor Thompson.
Just very quickly, looking at the Kent Downs National Landscape comments, they have obviously commented on the increased activity in vehicle movements, which would impact on the tranquility of the Kent Downs National Landscape. But they've also made a comment about they're concerned about this proposed use of white render, and they would ask that a more recessive, darker colour be used, or perhaps we look at timber weatherboarding. I wonder whether that's something we could consider conditioning, that the buildings are designed such that they blend in a bit better with the surrounding landscape by having a more sympathetic external material.
That is in the report, and it is already a condition. So condition 7, that's okay. So unfortunately, I'm hearing a lot of kind of don't want this, but then there's no planning policies against this as such. We've got the recommendations from the enhancements from Councillor Harwood to go with it as well. So I think actually probably for the officers, Councillor Harwood, if we could specify our height and width, so they've got something to go away with, to go with it, and then the informative of the wet suds to go with it. Are councillors in agreement with that roughly?
So the option of bringing in a possible traffic plan to
Sorry,
comment
yeah,
about
traffic
routing via Blind Mary's Lane.
Yeah, so a delivery plan and a dispatch plan, isn't it? So yeah, okay. So yeah, Councillor Jeffries.
Sorry, just on that traffic plan, are we going to condition that rather than be informative?
Yeah, that would be a condition, because an informative wouldn't do anything on that. I think the informative on the wet pond's appropriate because they may not be able to get it in the site, but they might be able to, hopefully.
Okay, Councillor Nagy, and then I will. I know. Okay, all right. Okay, so Councillor Harwood's proposed for those amendments, and we'll add the traffic plan and into it as well, and the informative to go with the wet suds pond. So are we? Do we know what we're voting for? Okay. Okay, so those in favour? Those against? Against. Okay. All right, Councillor. Application approved. Thank you. Councillors, there is tea and coffee downstairs. Do we want to take a break on where we're quite close to we're not far off? There's a break? Okay. Okay. So, did you say carry on, Tony, or did you say break? Councillor Harwood. Carry on. Okay, that's all right. Okay, just moving on then. Okay, we've got Little Oaks. So I'll just let the officers. So, we're good, officers? Okay. So moving on then, we've got Little Oaks at 68 Oakwood Road, Maidstone, Kent. Conversion of garage door and habitable space and erection of storage shed drive front and driveway. Obviously, there is no speaker, but we have to. But we need to introduce this one due to it being a councillor. Okay, so I'll move to the officers to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. 68 Oakwood Road is a two-story detached dwelling located on Oakwood Road within the Maidstone urban boundary. The proposal relates to the conversion of the existing attached garage store to a habitable space and the erection of a storage shed on the front driveway. The applicant had previously sought out pre-application advice, which has been incorporated into this proposal. The existing garage store would be converted to an office space with internal alterations, the replacement of the garage door with a window and the installation of 2-number roof lights above. The storage shed would replace an existing shrub and be located approx 1.3 meter further ahead of the principal elevation. The recommendation is to approve the proposal as set out in section 8 of the report, as it was assessed to not cause significant negative impact on the residential and visual amenity or any other material planning considerations in accordance with current policy and guidance. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Does anyone want to speak on this item? Councillor Jeffrey.
I was just going to propose we move as per the papers.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Okay. All in favour? I think that is unanimous and that is approved. Okay. Moving on then, 78 Glebe Lane, Maidstone. Okay, we've got no speakers. Does anyone wish to speak on this, or can we prove this a starred item? I don't hear anyone wishing, so we need to vote on that. So I'm going to propose it as a starred item. Is that okay? All in favour? Is that seconded first of all? Yeah, I just missed that bit. Oh. You can tell I'm parish chairman as well, can't you? So, all right. Okay, all in favour? No, I don't think Councillor Thompson voted. Okay. Sorry. Those against? Those four first of all. Okay, that is unanimous, yeah. Okay. Okay, so that is approved. Okay, moving on then. Cook Farm, Kings Lane, Marden. Again, we have no speakers on it, but I know, yeah, okay. Okay, so I'll move to the officer to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The application was first considered by members at the Planning Committee meeting held on the 22nd of February earlier this year. The application seeks to change the use of 1 hectare of agricultural land to use as a dog walking paddock with associated 1.8 metre height fencing, gate and parking. The site is located within the countryside and there are no local plan policies that support this type of development, and therefore the application is a departure from the local plan. The committee resolved to defer the decision to seek further ecological information, particularly in relation to the impact of intensive dog activity on the grassland and wildlife. The applicant has since submitted an ecology assessment, which includes a study looking into the impact of dog waste on nature reserves. The study found that when dogs were kept on leashes, there were concentrated areas around paths, and it found that when owners picked up their dog's waste, it reduced fertilisation levels considerably. Within the dog walking area, the dogs will be able to roam freely, therefore not leading to any concentrated areas, and the applicant has confirmed that all dog waste will be removed on a daily basis. Additionally, Condition 5 seeks details of the procedures for disposal of dog waste. Also, there's an urgent update with this application, and KCC Ecology have reviewed the submitted information and raised no objections. Members also resolved to defer the decision of the application to seek a mixed native hedge along the fence across the field to soften the impact visually and on wildlife. Condition 11 has now been amended to include the requirement of a new hedge along the eastern fence line to resolve that. Lastly, members resolved to defer the decision to seek information about how the grassland and hedgerows will be maintained and further details of access, egress and the turning head and safeguards in terms of potential conflict between dogs and the access track. The applicant has confirmed that the hedgerow will be managed to stewardship standards, and Condition 5 requires a maintenance and management plan. and the block plan has now been amended to show turning space within the area to ensure people can leave in a forward-facing gear. And also the block plan has been amended to move the western fence further into the field to exclude the track from the dog walking area to ensure there is no potential conflict between dogs and the access track. So overall, whilst the application is not in accordance with the development plan, material considerations and the minimal level of harm indicate that planning permission should be approved, and we are therefore recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, would you indicate?
I did. Thank you, Chairman. I think with, again, a little bit of a policy vacuum around what is quite a new trend, it's very difficult for us to ensure some of the conditions that we were discussing at the last meeting. However, I did just really want to flag that KCC Ecology just completely seemed to miss the point around what we were talking around in terms of the impact of lots of dogs on wildlife, because there's lots and lots of science out there to show that bird nesting around areas where there's lots of dogs and so on is much reduced, because essentially the smell and sight and sound is as if there's a load of wolves wandering about, and they seem to miss that out and just be talking about, you know, as if it was a manure heap or something, and there was going to be, you know, huge amounts of dog waste and so, but I'll skate over that. The one thing that I would ask as a small amendment is at condition 11, when it talks about the breakdown of the proposed boundary hedgerow, it talks about 2.5% wayfaring tree. Wayfaring tree is a real chalk specialist which hates clay, and Marden is known for being a bit clayey. So therefore, can I just ask that we swap the 2.5% wayfaring tree for the 2.5% purging buckthorn, Rhamnus cathartica, because, you know, brimstone butterflies lay their eggs on it. It grows perfectly well in the clay, and its hedges much better than wayfaring tree as well. So just a small substitution, which hopefully we can all approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Springett.
I was just going to propose as per the papers, but I'm happy with that amendment to do. I'd much rather have this at the bottom of my garden than 100 houses with screaming children on a lovely sunny afternoon, I promise you. So, yeah, I'm happy to if Councillor Harwood is proposing with that amendment, then I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I do concur with Councillor Harwood over the lack of policy here, and I've written we need a policy in big letters a few seconds ago. And I think, and it's not just the feces that are going to be collected. That's good to see that in there. However, they're not going to pick up the urine, and the urine's got the nitrogen in it that's clearly not able to be recollected, and it's going to be back into the waterways. So the sooner we get the proper ecology understanding of this and the policy around it, the better. But we are struggling without that.
Okay, so we have a proposer, we have a seconder with the amendment of the wayfaring trees changed to, and I'll let you inform the officer what that one is, the blackthorn basically, isn't it?
Purging buckthorn.
I'll take your advice on that, Tony. So there we go. Okay, so we'll move to
good,
the vote.
good for treating worms, hence the purging.
Okay, those in favour? Those against? Okay, that is approved. Okay, hang on. What's my agenda? Okay, appeals. Introduce the appeals.
So a list of the item 23 of the recent appeals. I'll just do a quick run through of some of the appeal decisions. So for Oakhurst, which is a holiday caravans, I think it came to committee, they wanted to vary a condition for renewables to just being in accordance with British standards, and the inspector dismissed the appeal on the grounds that the need to provide renewable energy on the development accords with the NPPF and policies. So that's a positive for upholding that. Next appeal was Chartview, which William Fletcher touched on earlier, for the large day room and pool house on a gypsy site. So that was refused on the grounds of the additional development was considered a scale and matting, which would be clearly urbanising. Got a listed building consent and a planning application in the town centre for roller shutters on Lower Stone Street. I think there's been a real drive with conservation team and the heritage team to make an improvement. So I think that's an good appeal decision that the inspector upheld that the use of the shutters would be harmful to the listed building and the setting of the conservation area. A gypsy and traveller appeal, enforcement appeal allowed on the grounds that the inspector found that there wouldn't be harm to the landscape and that the flooding grounds were acceptable given the conditions of floor levels and anchoring to the ground. And a loft conversion in a roundel of a converted oast house was again dismissed by the inspector, upholding our reasons that the development wouldn't conserve or enhance the countryside and would be harmful to what we consider as a non-designated heritage asset. So again, a few good decisions in terms of sort of heritage matters and sustainability and renewable use of renewables. If anyone's got any further questions on any of them, just please ask.
Thank you for that. I think Councillor Thompson's got a question.
It's not a question, Mr. Chairman. It's an observation that I'd like to make before the meeting closes, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, and I won't point out anybody else. I have to confess that I have not been able to hear clearly every word that has been spoken this evening. 4 different people. I have not been able to follow every single word. I'm confident, Mr. Chairman, that that's not affected my judgment or ability to make sound decisions this evening. So I'm not making that complaint, but I would just like to ask before the meeting closes whether I'm alone in this regard, or if others would also like the quality of the sound systems be paid attention to. And may I say, the speed at which we speak, and you'll notice I'm labouring this point, is material to this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I am aware that the acoustics in here have never been great in the time that I've been within the council, and they have gone from one system to another over the years. However, we will ask officers to look at that to see if there's any improvements that can be made to it. Any other questions about the appeals? No? Well, I thank you for your patience tonight. Sorry you couldn't hear all of it. And we'll try and work on that. And I thank you for those at home who are watching this on the live webcam as well. Okay, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you.